Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. WeatherBrains episode number 847 on the air everywhere. This is for April the 11th, 2022. This is James, and it is the pre-show magical part of the program where we share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and from time to time we do say outrageous things. Got some active weather going on tonight in Arkansas, out in the western part of that state. The Fort Smith market got a supercell that looks like it's going to hang in there like a hair in a biscuit, headed over toward areas north of Little Rock. But let's get everybody on the line here. What we're going to do is first off get the embed code going so we can be sure that we're on television tonight. Pretty important topic tonight. We're going to talk about an issue that women in meteorology deal with, and it's not pleasant, but I think we need to talk about it, and I'm glad we are tonight. All right, so we have now officially embedded the right embed code, and now let's invite everybody. And one of my colleagues will be on the show from the TV station here, Taylor Serrallo. It's going to be great to have her on the show. And we'll see who all we can stir up here. I think that Jen can make it. Jen does a lot of radio across the country, and in active situations like this, oftentimes she is tied up doing radio weather. All right, we got Dr. Neil, we got Rick and Bill and Jen and Troy and Kim. And let's do Taylor. And I think that's got everybody. All right, so we are good to go here. Hope you had a good Monday. I had a busy day today, but every day's a busy day for me. But, you know, busy days are good days. I would rather be busy than bored. I say that often. But yeah, we have a lot of active convection this week. We got the activity in Arkansas tonight. We'll have some pretty rough weather. Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee through tomorrow and Wednesday. And then ultimately where I am, probably late Wednesday night or during the pre-dawn hours Thursday. And most likely we'll catch a squall line down here with a cold front sweeping through. Don't think we'll have a big tornado issue here, but they certainly could have one off to the west. Ooh, Bill is actually at his home studio this evening.
It's been a long time.
Do you remember how to get there? I mean, did you have to get
directions
to get
I
home?
forgotten how to get here. I've forgotten how to do some things, but not that. I think I was gone for 7 straight weeks on Monday night.
Wow. Well, welcome back.
Thank you. I've missed y'all. I don't know why
Ooh, look who's here. Taylor Serrallo. This is exciting.
Hey, Taylor.
Very exciting.
See which AirPods I have in. 4 or 3 or 2. Okay. Now let's see if they'll work.
And I did not invite, I got an email from Neil. Did you see that?
Yeah, I put her email up here. I'll forward it to her.
Do I need to invite Kelly, or are you going to do that?
I'm doing it right now.
Okay, thank you. Taylor, that was a very sweet photo of you and your mom.
Yeah, we had a good weekend. My brother and my sister come here too. So she loved that.
Okay, so a family affair.
Yeah.
That's awesome. We had one of those book signings. We stayed 2 hours past the regular time Saturday, which is great. I mean, I'm honored that people came out to see us, but we wound up staying there 5 hours. So, but it's all good. It was all good. We had a very nice crowd of people. We had no troublemakers, at least to my knowledge. We've had a few.
You ever had
characters that show.
troublemakers at one of those, James?
We had a little issue in Tuscaloosa. Mayor Maddox gave us a police officer. And typically they're people with a psychiatric disorder, and they're harmless, but they can give the appearance of being kind of scary. So sometimes you need a little security. Jen, how are you?
I'm good. How are you all? Taylor, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'm good. It's crazy busy. Next 2 days look fun. That's
Oh,
for
yeah.
sure. I've
We're
got
gonna
so
be
many
shit-
radio
shh.
stations.
Define
Shaking and
fun,
baking.
Jen.
Fun and quote busy. It's all
I'm hoping
tomorrow's all.
Oklahoma will be a bust tomorrow, though.
Yeah. I'm concerned about Eastern, like Topeka, Kansas City to St. Joe. And then it's all hands on deck tomorrow for us. So we'll see how it rolls. But that's a big tornado swath. Oh, it's
We've got
springtime in the
stations in
plains.
Cape Girardeau and another station in Mount Vernon, Illinois. They're kind of in the middle of all that. So
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes. So Kim probably will not be on the show tonight. She's got some health issues in her family. And Rick might be on. Looks like things are quiet in Oklahoma City. All this stuff seems to be well southeast, east and southeast of there. And got Neil, and he should be coming on here in a second. Neil knows Taylor's dad. They used to work together. It's a small
That's
world.
cool.
Yep. My dad used to work at Panasonic Weather Solutions.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
The apple didn't fall far from the tree, huh, Taylor?
Hey, Bill, can you back your audio down a smidgen? You're a little hot.
First time anybody's ever told me that.
Well, yeah, let me rephrase that. You're too loud.
I don't know whether I can or not. It's my AirPods, James.
So it's not overly obnoxious.
I'll try to talk softly.
What happened to your fancy microphone?
I'm too lazy to get it out.
Wow.
Let's see. Maybe. How about that? Is that any better, James?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Much better.
Good.
Right,
I
here
think I
comes
was using
Rick.
the settings for my camera microphone instead of the AirPods, but it apparently that one I have to keep a lot higher because it's further away. My fancy microphone's right over here. I just roll it into place.
Just don't want to use it. Okay.
It's just too far now to the dock. That's just trouble.
So
I invited
We're-
Kelly, Dr. Jacobs, but I haven't seen anything from her.
Yeah,
There's Kim.
Noah's Gmail is notoriously
Oh, wait a minute. It didn't go out. Stand by for a second here because it tried to go with my weather bill email address. Let's try a different one here real quick. She may be wondering where we are. Just bounced back to me.
I've got her Gmail. You want me to put it in the chat?
Yeah.
And welcome to those watching on the television side. We're going to fire this thing up here in just a second. Kim can make it for a little while. Kim, how's your infant doing?
She's in good spirits, which is a really good sign, but we're still trying to figure out what's wrong. So she needs to stay in the hospital for a little while yet, and at least get some tests in the morning, which tests is a word that sounds so, oh, that's no big deal. Getting a 1.5-year-old prepped for and doing these tests is really hard. So it's been a really rough weekend, but we're at least still sticking in, and she's doing, as well as a little 1.5-year-old going in and out of the hospital can.
Okay, well, we will be expecting some good positive news here. We can get started if you want to. We're waiting on
Invite
Kelly.
Just went, James. So you might give her just a
All right.
minute.
Yeah, we'll give her one second here.
Watching that
Uh,
nasty storm east of Fort Smith. Had
Hey,
those
Taylor, how are
bottles
you?
on it.
Good, how are you?
Doing good. It's finally good chance to meet you.
Sorry, I'm
Um,
frantically trying to get organized on my laptop.
why would you want to do that, Neil?
That's a good
This is-
question.
You got to watch that work ethic. I mean, come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. Come on.
Taylor, I want to tell you one thing that before we get started and get the outside world brought in. I have a student in upper division class, my upper division atmospheric hazards class, that during severe weather a couple weeks ago we were watching, and she reached out to y'all just to say hello, and she pointed out how nice your response was. And I just want to tell you that she said, "Golly, Taylor is so nice." So,
Well, that's good. I'm always willing to talk to anybody, talk to younger students, whoever.
thank you for doing that.
Do it. Yeah, of course.
And here comes Kelly.
All right, I think I'm squared away now.
Neil
Sorry,
squared away.
such a
Kelly's-
bad.
We hope
such
not,
a
Neil.
bad host. I am sorry. Taylor, I haven't seen you in a long time, but do you remember me giving a data assimilation lecture to your class?
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember that was a long time ago now.
I know it was. That was fun. I need to start doing that more often.
Yep. UGA, that was a very little program, but it was an awesome program we had there, atmospheric sciences program.
Hey, Kelly, can you hear us okay?
I can hear you all fine. Hello, everyone.
Hey, Kelly.
Okay, great. Well, let's get this thing started here. Let's get this show on the road. So record track 1 and record track 2. And here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
WeatherBrains is brought to you by Midland Weather Radio. Every home, school, and business should have a NOAA Weather Radio, the official voice of the National Weather Service. And the AMS Weather Band.
Join the American Meteorological Society by becoming a member of the band. The AMS Weather Band is a global community of weather enthusiasts dedicated to learning and sharing their love of science. Visit amsweatherband.org to learn more and join the band today.
It's WeatherBrains episode number 847, longest running weather podcast in the history of the universe. This is for April 11th, 2022. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to have a very important topic tonight. And I see a lot of folks on the line here, including Rick Smith, who has one eyeball on radar to the east and one eyeball on this program.
Literally, that's my right eyeball is on that. My left eyeball is on NWS chat here, so you're kind of blurry in the middle. But
Yeah.
How many
No,
eyeballs
yeah.
do you have, Rick?
huh?
How many eyeballs do you have?
Well, not enough.
I don't know.
No, we got one tornado warning storm down in our
Yeah.
southeasternmost county. We're trying to push that over to let Tulsa have that here soon, and then kind of watching tomorrow like everybody else is.
And blurry in the middle is our working show title at this point. So that's good. And Kim, I guess you're kind of in the same boat. You've got some active weather to deal with tomorrow.
Yeah, possibly. And I kind of hope that I don't have to, because I have other things going on with my kids right now that really would be benefited by not having to understand different kinds of emergency response plans. I would just be fine if we have that whole cap holding or the upper level wave arriving at the wrong time situation. It make it like a May 20th, 2019. I wouldn't be too sad about that personally. But yes, we're all going to be watching eagerly and waiting for tomorrow.
So Troy, you're where do you stand with all of this active weather?
I don't know. I'm thinking that most of it not knocking the actually slight to enhanced risk, which kind of runs down from Kim and Rick down the I-35 corridor, even as far south as Austin tomorrow afternoon. I'm kind of thinking the lid will at least keep the coverage down. Now, you may get a couple of storms and they all may be producing large hail, but at the same time, I'm hoping probability is a little bit lower, and I'm going to send Kim a little of my atmospheric stability up the interstate and hopefully she can have that for tomorrow as well.
Yeah. Kill the cape. Kill the cape. That's good. Let's see. Dr. Jacobs, you're missing all the action here. Our East Coast correspondent.
Wow. Yeah, I know. I'm in South Carolina right now, and apparently, I guess Aubrey left before I got here last week when it was really bad. The weather's been pretty nice here.
Yep. We'll probably catch the squall line late Wednesday night or early Thursday morning, come through with strong winds. And Jen has, how many eyeballs do you need with all those radio stations?
20, 25. I have quite a few in the next 2 days. Big thank you to my colleague, Steve Hamilton, who's helping me tonight watching Poplar Bluff, because we have a station there that would go live. So we're kind of watching that. But next few days, it's the Eastern Kansas, Western Missouri stuff. It's going to have us hop in with all hands on deck, and we'll kind of see how it goes here. But it's springtime in the plains and it's firing up. So it's going to be pretty busy, I think, the next few weeks.
Yep, that's what happens this time of the year. But we've got an important topic. So Bill Murray, I'll let you bring in our special guests and we'll get this show on the road.
Yeah, James, it is a very important topic, and not our usual, fun stuff talking about the weather. There's a societal side to what we do, and tonight's a good opportunity to explore a very serious side of not only our industry but all industries and all facets of the world out there. Dr. Neil Jacobs has a very special guest for us tonight who will help lead the discussion, and I'll let him introduce her.
It's an absolute pleasure for me to be able to talk to Kelly Bonner and get her into coming on the show. It's I first met her when I first went to NOAA. We were at one of these senior executive summits, and she was giving a seminar, and I was just blown away by her ability to connect with people and talk about a lot of issues that were really important to the agency, but I didn't really know how important until I actually got there and started learning more. And so this is one of these really tricky topics where a lot of people don't want to report stuff. So it's really hard to understand how bad the problems are. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to work with Kelly on developing a lot of different programs. And sort of the philosophy is if you take care of the workforce, they take care of the mission. And Kelly is a key part of that. She's the director of the Workplace Violence and Prevention Response Program. And it's got to be one of the top most important jobs in the entire agency as far as making sure all the staff are well taken care of. And I'm just thrilled that she's here tonight and proud to have worked alongside her. Everywhere from crafting policy to even doing some hearings on it. So this is something that goes all the way to the top levels of Congress as far as their concern and support. So thanks, Kelly, for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. I have no weather report for you all, except for that I don't think the weather's too bad in Bethesda, Maryland. The rest of what you all said went way over my head. I was just happy no one said tornado, because last week we were on the news in Bethesda for being down the alley of like a tornado, and I was hiding in my parking garage. So I was like, what do I do? So I appreciate all of the work that you do. And Neil, to reciprocate, it was a pleasure working with Neil. He really was passionate about this issue and is one of the key players in how this got pushed so far. It was a program of 1, and then thanks to Neil and some others' intervention, it's now a program of 10. And a proper office stand-up. So this topic is so important to be able, and I'm honored to be a part of this discussion today. So thanks for welcoming me.
Well, and Kelly, this show is really an offshoot from an email that we received back in December from listener Chris Bovitz in Minnesota. And he, thought that this topic warranted an entire episode. And we have talked about, in various facets of it along the way at different times, but everyone thought that it needed to be revisited. And the situation came up that he refers to involving a TV meteorologist who had a very threatening tweet with explicit language back in December that disgusted him. And he couldn't even imagine how it could have affected the TV meteorologists that received that tweet, or how other messages like that have affected other on-camera meteorologists. And he, of course, mentioned, that a lot of WeatherBrains regulars have probably experienced such things and can share their experiences. And so, so many times you hear this is what we have to put up with. It's wrong, but it's just something we have to deal with. And he thought, and we believe too, that it's very important to hear from experts about what can do to fight it and to lessen the impact of it. And so there, probably lots of other meteorologists that have experienced the same things. We've heard examples of that. We'll spend this first part of the show tonight talking about some examples that we've heard of, or even in some cases have experienced. And
we got to bring in Taylor too, Bill.
I'm sorry, I haven't introduced Taylor. Taylor is, of course, meteorologist at ABC 3340 in Birmingham with James, and is one of the few meteorologists that can hang with the Spanmeister on a severe weather event, and she does a great job there. Taylor, we welcome you to the show tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Now, Taylor, you may or may not want to share from your experience, something in your past that you had. If you feel comfortable, we'd love to have you share anything you'd like to share with us tonight to get us started.
Okay, so are we just looking for examples of harassment type stuff?
Yeah,
I've got
there's
everything you can imagine.
There's all kinds, and we want to explore some of them that some people may not even think about.
Well, Bill, let me. I want to ask both Kelly and Taylor, for that matter, and we talked about this ourselves in the last couple of weeks here on the show. Kelly, especially, because I'd like to get sort of your view on this. Is a lot of this we're seeing born of social media? I mean, I can recall cases when I was in television where we would get letters in the mail and they would be anonymous. I tracked a few of those people down, never had that problem again after that. But that's the old fashioned way. And I look at this, Kelly and Taylor, and what we've talked about here and how brutal and anonymous social media can be. Is this born of all that, Kelly?
I think it's amplified by social media. I think that this kind of behavior has been around for a long time. I think the belief that you have access to women's bodies, or you can comment on people on the news or on TV, like that happens. But I think in the past, it just happened in a living room and we moved on, right? Now, social media has made a catalyst where people then feel empowered and emboldened because they're anonymous to go and make these comments. So I don't think it's born from social media, but I think social media amplifies what's already an existing problem, which is this belief that like women are objects that can be evaluated, whether it's just on their body and body shaming or to more extreme degrees. And I think social media has made people be keyboard warriors, right? Where they can hide behind their keyboards and say whatever they want on any topic at any time. But I'll defer to Taylor too and her perceptions, but that would be what I would say.
I think it's just also easier. I mean, they can just log on, type in my name and hit message. Whereas, it's harder to write a letter, go get a stamp, go do all that. It just makes it so much easier for everybody to just find you and message you.
Yeah. So some of the examples that we've heard about, and especially relate to body shaming, which you're mentioning there, that seems to be very pervasive in the for female on-camera meteorologists, and it's just a terrible thing, exacerbated, like you say, by the by the anonymity of social media. Aubrey, you're joining us tonight. It's good to have you back. Thank you for being here on this special show.
Thanks for bringing me back.
I know you've had your share of situations that have made you uncomfortable. Do you care to share any of those, or at this point?
So I can, and I don't mind doing that. I will say that I do feel very lucky because I don't get it nearly as often as I know a lot of other women do. And it's a shame that it happens in the first place. And to be honest, I don't know that I could have done this career as long as I have, had it been that much worse. especially compared to some of these other comments that I see from some other women that they get, and almost on a daily basis, which is very sad. So do you want to talk more about comments from viewers or coworkers?
Well, it's kind of both. I think, we want to sort of explore as many areas of it as we need to sort of surface, because I think it does have multifacets for sure.
So thankfully, sexual harassment was actually a lot more prevalent in the restaurant industry. So I dealt with that a lot more with that former career than I do now. There was a former anchor at one point that did used to make inappropriate comments, and he was kind of just one of those good old boys that, grew up in a different era, didn't think anything of it, and would just make those kind of offhanded remarks that maybe he didn't see as a problem. And I felt, a little bit like, really, that's what you should be saying to me. One of it was actually when I used to wear my glasses, when I was having issues with contacts and stuff, and I would wear my glasses, and he would make some not full on sexual remarks, but just, some comments in that retrospect. As far as viewer comments, I mean, I've gotten everything from, oh, you've been off for a few days and you're glowing, you must be pregnant, nope, sorry, just wanted to, maybe enjoy vacation a little bit, which probably, hopefully it doesn't happen this week after coming back from vacation, but those kind of things. I haven't gotten any nudity photos, but there have been, I would say, shirtless photos from guys that think that it's okay to send those. I don't really keep a stash because I kind of try to ignore it, but there are those creepy photos and those creepy messages from people that just think it's okay. And then it sounds like, and I'm sorry, I hopped in kind of in the middle of what Taylor was saying. I don't know if she was going through some of the nasty ones that you get.
I haven't yet, but I got everything.
Just send those to James Aubrey, and he'll take care of them.
He'll take care of them.
He'll shame them for you.
I'm honestly very, very thankful that I don't get them as many as some other people do. And it's unfortunate that this is basically part of the job, and that you have to have not just a thick skin when, things with the forecast go wrong or off or whatever. And, you kind of pick yourself up some days, but then you have to deal with the comments. And again, the people hiding behind Facebook. But I do find that if you respond, and there's a limit of response, whether it's being nice, just acknowledging it. And you do have to be careful with some responses, but I do find that when you do respond in some way, a lot of times they will apologize. Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean that. Oh, this is actually what I meant. And they kind of try to backtrack off of what they actually say. And I would say that happens a majority of the time.
Taylor, was there anything you wanted to add as we do a little bit of sharing here?
I mean, I've had dealt with it all. I've had pictures of private parts sent to me while doing the morning show, videos sent to me while doing the morning show. I have to say, I mean, it's a daily thing, not the pictures and videos, but the harassment. But when I was working from home, it's very interesting. When you're working from home and you're seeing from here up, a lot of that went away. So it has to be something with being able to see our bodies on the green screen. Because, I mean, it went down dramatically.
Wow.
Which was crazy to me. I noticed a huge difference, but I mean, it's daily, it's constant. It's just,
that's really interesting, Taylor. I don't know that I've ever had heard from another female meteorologist that recognized that.
Yep. Working from home for a long time. I mean, people would still say stuff. It would be more so like compliments on, oh, your hair looked pretty today, but not, I mean, when it's
right.
Daily is like, gross body comments, but it's because they can see it. And the anchors are behind a desk. So they don't, they're not showing their entire body the whole time. So I definitely think that has a lot to do with it, whether it be the sexual harassment or the mean body comments, whatever. I definitely think it's partly because of how much
So
of this.
I'll ask this to Aubrey and Taylor and James too, and of course Troy from his history. What responsibility do you think that the station has to step into those sort of things? Do they have any at all from a human resource standpoint? And then I'll let Kelly, chime in on that from an organizational standpoint.
I think they do have a responsibility when it comes to something that we feel uncomfortable, that it's something that we don't feel like we can handle. If we feel threatened, if something makes us uneasy, I feel like there is a responsibility there to have our back, and to document everything, and also call law enforcement when deemed necessary, even if it's just keeping an eye on the parking lot at night. Everyone has different parking lots and different security and stuff, and just watching us walk to our cars at night or early in the morning or something like that. But we also have to recognize when we do feel uncomfortable to bring it, because the station's not going to know that, a lot of times that we're getting all these messages. So we have to bring it to management, to the news director, to the GM, or whoever it might be, or human resources. So we also need to be proactive if something does make us feel uncomfortable, or it's repetitive, maybe from the same person.
Anyone
I
else
think
want
so.
to weigh in on that? Troy, go ahead.
Yeah, I would think so too. I agree with Aubrey on that especially if this is a station account, and it depends on how it comes in. The station has got to be involved, or I see Kelly not. I would think from that standpoint that they would realize that some of that responsibility is going to come back on them if they don't take a look at this and get it under control. I definitely agree with Aubrey there.
And I'll say here, they encourage people to report it to HR. And there's always an open door policy here. And again, I'm in a different world than Taylor. But I do know that we had a news anchor that reported a pretty serious threat to HR, and they got the FBI involved, and that person that made the threat had a little visit, which scared the pants off of them. And they're not going to do that again anytime soon. And so, yeah, I do think most stations, all of them should, but I think most of them they welcome you to report it and let them assist in trying to, help you, get this under control.
I wanted to maybe ask Kelly a quick question. I do want to have her sort of go through the process, at least from a federal agency standpoint of the services that they offer and things like that. But this is probably a more broad question that would apply to almost any industry, even if your workplace has a lot of measures set up. How do you encourage people to come forward and report it? I mean, you can have the greatest response program in the world, but if no one actually feels comfortable reporting it, you can't implement the next step. So how do you do that part?
I think a lot of it is like you have to walk the talk to get people to feel comfortable, and so often these discussions dissolve into, and I'm not disagreeing with anything that's been said, but like it's on the person who's impacted by the issue to report it. And when you leave it in that way, people automatically feel kind of set up. Well, what are the consequences? How do I know I'm going to be safe if I report? How do I know this is going to stop? And so it's really like your policies have to speak about that. There needs to be meetings, like you all are having meetings where that's brought up about how we treat each other and what we tolerate. Just to go back to what Taylor and Aubrey were saying, if the station owns the account, and what Troy said, if it's the station's account, it's their responsibility to be checking the account to see what's happening and to flag it. And they should be flagging it and seeing. It should be assumed, which I think it's an open secret, that women are disrespected or harassed via social media, or comments are made about their body in general. So there should be a policy where which it's not we go to HR, it's that no, we actively look at the feed after someone's on and we see the disgusting comments. And then if it's on your personal feed, that's different. If it's your own account, they don't have access to that, right? So then if that does happen on your own account, it's understandable that you need to bring it to HR, but really that should be embedded in the systems at stations, that someone should look through the feed knowing that this is what's happening. If you're saying this happens every day, then someone should be looking periodically to see these behaviors, and they should be responding as the account that we will not tolerate this behavior. And it could be a cut and paste statement. You write that as many times as you have to, and you block the person. Because I mean, you don't need that in your lives. And it's not, for me, I get worried about putting all the responsibility on the person who's experiencing the behavior to then report it. It's already a burden to have to carry and see it, to then have to go and tell HR when that's something you can easily pull. Versus in like a government agency, people may not know. Like when we get people reporting to us in the program that I run, people may not know that that's happening because it's not public facing or it's privately happening between coworkers. Then we kind of need them to tell us, because how else would we know that they're being harassed? But if someone's on social media doing it, it's even easier. It's like, oh, okay, this is what was said. Okay, you're blocked. This is not something we tolerate as an agency policy. And just continuing to say that may deter people from feeling emboldened to even put that down in the first place.
Something that
Kelly?
I noticed is a lot of the
Go ahead.
time it's not the same person doing it over and over. So like when I say I get it every day, it's not one person who's saying these things every day, it's different people. So at that point, you can't really just report everybody for ever sending one comment that's bad. So I try to report the ones, like if I've ever felt uncomfortable, I've made sure if it's been someone who's done it consistently, or if it's somebody that I ran into in person out, in the world that then decided to come find me on social media, I've made sure to report those. But I mean, the daily stuff, it's just different people. And if I don't, I'd never really respond ever. And then they usually stop, but you're still getting 3 or 4. Hey baby, you look sexy today. I wear that red for me. And I'm like, goodness, like, I'm just trying to help you, give you the forecast today. Like, are you kidding me?
Right. Kelly, I got a question for you. Outside our circle tonight, or in the real world, which is where you work, how willing, Kelly, are people to talk about what we're talking about tonight? Because, I go back and I look at, James and I are, James always kids, we've been around since television was invented and radio was invented. And I cannot even begin to imagine what Taylor and Aubrey and Kelly are talking about here. I had something happen a number of years ago and it got taken care of pretty quickly. But, and also, Kelly, let me ask you this. We're talking about primarily the effect that we're seeing on female broadcasters, which are the sort of the public image of our field. But how big a deal is this, Kelly, from a racial standpoint? Do we see this as in a racial standpoint in this country? What about in the gay straight area? Do we see harassment there? Is there harassment of white men? And I believe we see that. I just don't. And it goes back to my question for you, Kelly, is this something that people as a whole sit around talking about?
No, I don't think
Okay,
they do, because people are uncomfortable with it. You've got two
Yeah.
sides of this, right? When people feel, it's a natural inclination when you don't know the solution or you don't feel like you can be impactful, that you just want to back away and bury your head in the sand. And then when you have people who are experiencing it, if they don't feel like anyone's listening, they're less likely. It gives the message, whether you intended to or not, that you just don't care. So then they're less likely to report it. Or unfortunately, scientifically, what we see is that the threshold of tolerance for people who are either marginalized identity, which means of a different race or a different sexual orientation, for example, or gender identity, and women, their recognition it's called lower, meaning they tolerate a lot more crap before they talk about it, right? So when you hear, even when I hear Taylor saying, well, I tell you the really bad ones, it's like, well, I'm sure there's a ton of really somebody else looking at it. If it was a man experiencing, they'd be like, hey, baby, I don't Like, that's not okay. And you're like, well, it's just a Tuesday at the office, right?
Oh, yeah.
And
It's
then
9 a.m.
if your threshold goes higher for what is uncomfortable. So you have that. So it's widely underreported in the first place. And if you are of a marginalized identity or you are a minority in population, so for example, women, for example, in meteorology, to begin with, it's much bigger now, but like the evolution of women's role in meteorology, you are more likely to experience harassment than somebody who isn't. And the way we socialize people to respond, if a man gets told, hey, baby, they're high-fiving, saying, I still got it. A woman's like, this is a Friday at work, and I don't want to have comments on my body. I do not want to be perceived this way. And so it's like those comments may fly under the radar for some folks who are like, well, I'd love to hear that. I wish someone would say that about me, or trivializing where it comes from, which is basically that people feel free to comment on a woman's body like it's property, and that it's not a job, it's not a professional setting. Whereas when a man does it, people just expect, I don't think about my weatherman's body. Like I just accept that they're giving me the news. Whereas with women, it's like, well, where's this, how high is the skirt? Or are they wearing heels, or what they look like, if they put makeup on, and this freeness to comment on it.
I think, Troy, your question is a really important one, because in part, we're talking about this, we're starting from the broadcast angle, but one of the reasons we wanted to do this show tonight is because when the issue was raised within our panel, we had a sidebar email conversation, realized every single woman on our show has experienced sexual harassment or assault in our field. And when we realized that, we realized we need to talk about it, in that it happens in a lot of different ways. And I think, covering the piece where it's this stranger and unwanted attention is a really important piece that absolutely is happening to our broadcast community. It happens in a lot of different facets. And I'd love to bring in Jen. I know she has some comments on that too, working in a different side of broadcast. And then I think we'll get into some other aspects of, there are things that happen with interpersonal, in-person stuff in the office too. And that'll bring in, Kelly, I think you have a lot that we can talk about with stuff that happens in NOAA. And I think it's stuff we want to bring light to, that there are some difficult situations that are part of that. But Jen, wondered if you wanted to talk a little bit about your experience too.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. And I'll talk, and then I'd like to toss it back to you, so you can share as well. But just a little, I did not start in radio once the radio began, but I did start in the late 90s. I started radio in 1997, and I was 24. And I knew nothing about the radio industry at all. And I was a meteorology grad, and it was my first weather job. And I was extremely naive. And I had my name and phone number in the phone book. For those who don't know what a phone book is, they actually had your name and number, and they handed out to your community so people could call you. And I got my first marriage proposal that way, from somebody who called me and said, you have the best voice I've ever heard, and I listened to you in such and such city. They actually weren't in Atlanta. They were in a different place, and called me and said, are you married? And whatever. I'm like, yes, click. And I made myself unlisted. When I worked morning drive time, we weren't as automated as now. So we actually called radio stations and did everything over phone or ISDN line, and, did a 3, 2, 1 countdown. We talked to everybody, and there's a lot of flirty talk. It was, I was only the second female in our radio group. And so, it was, interesting and always a great dynamic when you're the only female of an all male show. It brought in a different dynamic. Yep. And I had no guidance on what to expect. And I could give, the flirtiness as much as the next person, but then things started getting a little bit more uncomfortable with some of the talk. And I think a lot of the men that I talked to thought they could just get away with saying whatever. I was young. I was clueless. I figured I just got to take it, just like the social media stuff now. But then, I actually had to listen to it. And I'm like, well, that's just radio, right? So I didn't really say anything. And then I also learned very quickly that what I say on the air could actually cause some interesting things to happen as well, because I made a comment live that I thought Valentine's Day was the stupidest holiday ever, and that we should be saying we love each other every day. And somebody took that and went, well, I'm going to send you Valentine's Day cards. And they postmarked it from Loveland, and from Valentine, Nebraska. And it would have been enough. It was innocent enough until they sent like 50 or 60 of them, and they smelled like cologne, and, human resources that actually got on their radar. And I had a host that would call me the weather winch on the air, and he thought that was funny. And I did not think that was hilarious at all. But one of the most disgusting people that I talked to, and I actually had blocked this out until I was talking to my best friend, Sally, who we were having this discussion for the Tonight Show. And she reminded me of this guy that I talked to every day at 4 a.m. to give my forecast. And he would ask me, "What are you wearing?" And it was like a very raspy, weird, creepy voice. And, I'm like, "Clothes, stick to your weather." And, "Are you wearing panties?" Every day. And it was so inappropriate and just disgusting. And I'm sure that there were more things I just can't remember. And so Sally had joined the team, and she was filling in for me. And she started in radio and had so many things that were said of her, things that were shown to her that was just horrific. And she had that experience of the radio business. And I warned her when she was filling in for me one morning about this dude. And she goes, "Does it bother you that he says these things to you?" And I said, "Well, yeah, but it's got to just deal with it, right? It's radio." And she's like, "No, let me ask you again. Does this bother you that he's saying these things?" And I said, "Yes." And she goes, "Okay, I'll handle it." And so she relayed to me later that the guy pulled the same line of questioning with her, and she put him in his place. And I'm not going to repeat what she said because it would be, let's just say she made him speechless. And she could always one up you with whatever comment she's given. She'll throw it back and then some, put him in his place. And she had already talked to one of the managers about, "Look, this is where my experience is. Can I stand up for myself and others if we're getting," because you'd already gotten a little bit of some of the creepiness on her end. And they're like, "Yeah." And so she called the radio station's program director, said exactly what happened. The guy was like, she goes, "I'm not going to stand for it. He talks to Jennifer this way all the time." He's like, "Okay, yes, ma'am." And the guy didn't work there anymore after that point. And so the last example I want to give is we went on station visits, and I went to one of the radios. I had a great rapport with this guy. We went to this radio station, and it's actually from the same city of the guy who sent the Valentine's Day cards. So I was actually nervous that he was going to show up, and he did show up. But I had a board operator that was my bodyguard, and, everything was fine. What I wasn't expecting is that after the show at 9 a.m, everyone was at the bar completely lit, drunk. And the show host, who I had a great rapport with, was completely loaded and came up to me and was like, "Take your glasses off." And I'm like, "No, I can't see you then," and then, so I took my glasses off, and he just wanted to see my eyes. And he's like, "Okay, now take your shirt off. I am here all by myself, this young person, not knowing what's going on." And it ruined our rapport. And, my experiences had an impact on me as a naive young meteorologist. And I quickly had to learn how to become private. It did cause me trust issues too. And, we did have some sexual harassment training at the workplace, but it really did not cover the broadcasters. And Sally was one who took it upon herself to really try to say, "Hey, the broadcasters are dealing with a lot of crap." And, and gave her some experiences and gave some of my experiences or other ones that were happening in our department. And just trying to bring light to that, to try to bring more, because you really did not feel supported. I did not feel supported until I confided in Sally. And I had someone who, because it wasn't that I was a weakling, I just didn't know. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to talk to. And you just like, I'm just going to deal with it. And she empowered me to speak up. And so I've grown since that point. No longer that little naive girl, I don't do, and luckily now I don't really have to deal with it because we don't talk to radio stations very often. And so it's one of those things. I get the occasional email or whatever, and my fur may fly a little bit, but I'm not going to be spoken to that way and with those inappropriate comments anymore, because it's not right. And I will defend anyone, whoever you are, to the nth degree, that you don't have to stand for it either. So that's my experience I wanted to share. And, I know there's a little chat going on. Kim, I'm going to throw it back to you so you can kind of lead us in the next direction here.
I want to say one thing, Kim,
Okay.
before you take it over, because I think that Jen just surfaced something that's very, very important. And that's bystander intervention. Because whether it's in the workplace or it almost always is in the workplace, but sometimes in social media, a bystander observes this sort of behavior. And I was telling the team when we were discussing this show, a week or so ago before we teed it up to do it tonight, that in our field, in corporate industry, we tend to fire first and ask questions later. When we run into this sort of behavior, but in many, many cases, it comes because another employee comes and says, so-and-so is making so-and-so uncomfortable. And, here's the examples that I've seen. And, you need to observe this and see what you think. So bystander intervention is really a critical component of helping to make sure that culture in any organization is trying to prevent this sort of thing. So I just wanted to throw that out there, Kim. I know you want to share your example because we're coming from, a variety of different approaches here tonight, and you've got the academic approach.
Yeah, and I'll build on that point too, about bystander intervention and even if you don't see something directly, things that you can do to help, because that's a part of what I'll share. My story admittedly is a little bit rougher, but I will just give a very high level. What I went through was a little bit more intense of a thing. I was sexually assaulted at a professional meeting that was held at OU when I was a grad student. And I'll just say first of all, it was an utter shock to me that when it was happening to me, I had that recorder, in the back of your mind, just kind of going, well, what is this? What is happening? It was such a shock. And one of the things that I carry away from that, though, is that until that point, no man in our field had ever treated me with any degree of disrespect. And in a way, I want to say that is a testament to our field and how many great people there are. So while today we are talking about the pervasiveness of these issues, even with the experience I went through, I want to underscore, I think we're still talking about a minority of the people in our field. They're just a very important minority that we cannot ignore, and we have to figure out how to deal with these issues when they arise, because they can be complicated, and especially if you are a more marginalized person in our field or just an underrepresented group, like women in our field, we're still underrepresented. And especially in the spaces that I have been a part of, the academic spaces, we are very underrepresented. So I want to highlight both of those pieces. But thinking back on what happened to me, it's part what Jen was saying too. And this is something for the young women who are entering our fields to just be aware of. Much of what happened to me was undoubtedly a function of the fact that I was young and, in their view, less well connected, and therefore less powerful. Both of the people who were involved were trying to use their positions of power to manipulate me. And when everything happened, and I was able to extract myself from the situations, but I also didn't know what to do, because nothing like that had ever happened to me before. And you sort of question, well, is this worth bringing up to anybody? And even whatever the degree is of what you've been through, this is probably a tape that we all play in our heads. Or should I just let it go and try to live on? Especially if it's people in your field, it can feel very daunting to go after that person or those people. And I was sitting on it until I learned that one of the people who was involved had also gone after other women at the same meeting. And when I learned that, I decided, and they were doing the same thing. They had various levels of, oh, it's no big deal, or they were so traumatized they couldn't speak. There were layers of things that they were going through. And I realized, because I fought in my situations, and that's something I want, if that's something that's happening to you, it is important to fight. Do try to do that. Because I had done that, I had more ability to come forward than some of my friends who were sitting more in their trauma. And so I did. I went through a reporting chain, and we're trying not to talk about institutions involved with specific cases and stuff here tonight, but I do want to say this was the University of Oklahoma, and they were fantastic. And this was before the Me Too era. They did everything right. I reported through a chain of men who were in different positions of leadership and authority in meteorology and in atmospheric and geographic sciences. And they all believed me. They didn't ask any horrible questions of me. They helped me to find the right things that I should do to report. And the university ultimately did not allow either of those people involved to ever come back to our campus. And so that every piece of that was as great as it could have been in those circumstances. Later on, we'll probably talk a little bit about where we as a field still need to go. And I still have some things that I am dealing with out of this, in part because these people are still in my field. And I do have to see them at different functions. There are some uncontrolled spaces, like conference settings, where people like this can mingle and roam with no history of what they've done or sanctions they've received from their employer or other entities coming into those spaces. It can be a little bit of a free-for-all, but I'll save that conversation for later. And I just do want to note that there are places you can go where there are wonderful people that will do the right thing. I think that's really, really important to hear, even when you go through something really difficult. And it helped me. It helped me a lot in my healing. So with that, I know Neil wants to talk a little bit about how these things play out differently in different settings. This, for me, was people coming into actually my place of employment, and it wasn't theirs. And we had different things we could do depending on their employment status, that the university did take some actions with their employers. Things work differently in the private sector. When you're in academia, when you're working with a federal agency, you can expect different levels of intervention. And I'll just toss to you, Neil, to get into all of that.
Yeah, that was probably the most surprising thing for me when I came to NOAA, because I came from private industry and I happened to work in a right to work state. So we could fire people just because we didn't like them. We didn't even need a reason. And we could do it with, we can make it retroactive. It doesn't matter. You can fire someone and tell them to be out in the next 15 minutes. But the federal agencies do not work that way. And it is a long, drawn out process. And I'm going to ask Kelly to sort of give you an overview of the process and then highlight a lot of the parts of her program, because things like bystander intervention and advocates and outreach and all of that is bundled into this program. I want everyone to hear about it, because I think there's a lot of useful information in there. But that was probably the hardest thing for me to see, because the process takes so long. A lot of the people were reluctant to report issues because they knew they would be going back to work with these people and they would have to see them for weeks or months or years. And it would create, and their fear was that it would make things worse and create a more hostile work environment. And so there's a huge reluctance to act because of the process that you have to follow. And the thing is, if you don't follow the process, then the perpetrators actually oftentimes get off, and then things are even worse. So the process is tricky, but it's even worse if you don't follow it. But let me turn it over to Kelly, and just maybe you've been hearing a lot about what's going on in the field, and I can't imagine any of this is a surprise to you, but what was it like when you first came to know and sort of saw a lot of the issues we were dealing with, and not necessarily just in the Weather Service, but in in the other line offices? And how do you go about setting up a program and knowing all the different things to put in place? Because you single-handedly just orchestrated this whole thing.
So there's so many questions there. So what did I first think about when I came to NOAA and saw? I think NOAA is pretty typical of a government organization. I think the things that made NOAA higher risk for people being harassed and assaulted was the fact that it's decentralized, like there's locations all over the place. And so the further you are from like home, the worse it can be. And people were in the field and doing field work, and all of those things make it more complicated. And just in general, so coming into that, I was like, okay, and there's such a low level of reporting, right? For those reasons, that there's systems in place that, what I've noticed is the big difference between private and feds, and I would put academia with that, is that with private industry, you can fire quickly, but people rarely do prevention. Like they just think, well, I just fired you and got rid of you. And so the low level behaviors that maybe don't rise to that level of firing fester, and people still feel like they're in kind of not great environments. And there's not really a strategy around making sure this never stops so we don't have to fire anyone. In the more government sector in academia, it's really hard to fire people, particularly in academia when they have tenure. And if you're a Fed and made it through your probation, it's really hard to fire you. It's double hard to fire you if you're unionized, which I'm not anti-union. It's just a fact when it comes to these issues, there's more protections and layers. And so it's really difficult to get rid of folks, but government wants to go all in on prevention and making people aware of what's going on. And so it's inverted. And so what we did at NOAA is really, one, we're a STEM agency, we're scientific. I really believe in talking the language of risk and talking the language of science and letting people know from a business case, and then we're going to get to the human aspect here, why you need to care, why this is an issue, why maybe it's not everybody that's doing this, it is a small minority, but really the purpose of these conversations, we're not speaking to that small minority because they probably don't care, right? We're speaking to all of you who are listening who do care and would say, I would never behave that way. Great. You're the person we want to have a conversation with and bring to the table. So started by going there and building a business case and understanding there's certain things that you just need. If there's gaps in services, if people aren't reporting, one of the single most important things you can do is set up some kind of support for people who are victimized or impacted by this behavior. And so we set up victim advocacy, which allows for people to have someone talk them through an issue if they're experiencing it without necessarily having to deal with the other entities that are not for the impacted person. In the government, HR and other entities are for the organization first, like they're protecting liability. They see things through the risk and liability. Versus victim advocacy, it's only specifically for the person who's been harassed or been assaulted. And I'm not saying that HR doesn't care about people, they do, but some of the mandates that they have are actually, they're for protecting the agency. So if they fire someone, it's because of liability, not because they want to make someone's life better per se. It's just the fallout. So understanding victim services need to be there. And also, I think the second biggest piece is a culture's change, right? Is how do we do culture change work, which is what we're talking about. How do we make people feel valued and heard? And it's less about zero tolerance, which I agree, this should never, ever happen in the workplace, and more about what I call a culture of accountability. And so a strategy that enforces that. Like, what does accountability look like? Accountability looks like, those of you who are like, this is disgusting what I'm hearing, I can't believe people experience this, that you are empowered to act and intervene via bystander intervention, for example, but also that we're teaching people in areas where bystander intervention is great, but if your workplace is toxic, then people aren't going to stand up for anybody, right? And conversely, if you are in a toxic work environment, you're not going to speak up for yourself. So also tackling leadership engagement, understanding what your responsibility is. And I will say part of what made NOAA successful is the fact that when Neil was leading NOAA, he was all in on this, and not just like saying it, he was walking the all inness. He really wanted to stand this up. And so when you hear things like, okay, there's these tweets or there's just constant barraging, having leadership step in and say, not okay, what can we do? And then proceeding to walk the walk and be accountable to the people they work with. And NOAA did a really good job with that. So it allowed me to set up training and prevention. It was like three-pronged. Training that was centralized, that got people on the same like playing field about what definitions are, what behaviors are, to know what that is. Second tier of that was knowing when to intervene and not, and how to people can protect themselves. But then also empowering leadership to kind of know, to be not necessarily comfortable on this topic, because there's nothing comfortable about harassment and assault. Like, I don't feel comfortable, and I've been doing this for quite some time, but be more so competent and confident, like empowered to say, okay, I'm learning about this. I feel like I could tackle this. I feel like there's some wins to be made here and ways to improve the workforce. So working with leadership was key. And then that victim services piece, the helping the people who are impacted, having a space just for them, a safe space, so that they had a place to go. Because the numbers are alarming. It's either somewhere between 40 and 80% of women in general, have experienced sexual harassment in the workplace. So, and I know from my own experience, there's not a job I've had that I haven't been propositioned at, that I haven't been sexually harassed at. And there's several jobs that I've had where people have attempted assault. So this is a common thing that every woman's dealing with, and bringing awareness. We're going beyond awareness to saying, we already know this is happening. Let's do actual strategy to get us there. And I feel like Noah was all in and being able to do that on those three tiers.
Let's say you're a private company or a university, maybe a smaller university, because a lot of major universities are trying to stand up programs like this. How do you go about just building out a program? I mean, I guess there's companies that you can contract with. There's a lot of information online, but I think it's, at least from private industry's perspective, particularly smaller startup companies, it's a little bit daunting and tricky, because first of all, no one really wants to talk about it. And then second of all, there's a lot of, I guess, maybe not just private industry, but I've seen it in private industry. There's a view that if we stand up this program to do this, it's saying that we have a problem. And we don't want to admit that we have a problem. So how do you tackle that? Or do they end up getting forced into it because somebody has an incident?
So it's two-pronged. One is getting people to understand that fear is irrelevant anymore, because we're in a generational shift. I'm gonna tell you right now, as like one of the oldest, I'm like a geriatric millennial. They've coined a new term. I'm offended. That millennials and Gen Zers, they see that as a positive. They don't see it as a negative when you have a program that's like work well-being and workplace safety. They think this is where I want to work. And you're going to find people asking this question when they come on the interview. What do you do for mental health? What do you do for safety? And if you don't have an answer, they're going somewhere else. So one is just relanguaging what that is. No, it's not we have a problem here. It's that we take care of our people. There is no, we hope it's zero, but we want to be prepared, even if it's one, to stand that up. So one's languaging it. The second thing I would tell a startup or any program, something you can do right now, is you can we set up a hotline. It's not as expensive as you think it is. For an organization like us that has 25,000 people, it was far less, not expensive at all, to set up a 24/7 hotline that anyone could call that was not connected to HR, not connected to the company, and get services, get connected to their local shelter if they need to go rape crisis shelter, or get connected to mental health services. That is the number one thing you could do if you have nothing else. And then the second piece is to, again, hire someone who understands how to build programs, who has the background in either treating this or dealing with this directly, and has that science program building. Like, get both of those things together. But first is a mindset shift, is understanding that we are taking care of our people. And however we need to take care of them, mental health services or access to it, rape crisis center, access, not that we have those things, but that when you come work for us, this is all the things we do, whether it happens to you or not. That is the way we need to language this, and shift from being like, oh, if we say we have a hotline, then there must be some sexual assault or harassment going on.
I want to congratulate you for saying that, Kelly, because I think on the private enterprise side, what you're talking about is that's a competitive advantage to any company that offers, that sort of an inclusive environment to its team members. It's not only just, paying a living wage and having good benefits today, but it's also, creating those safety nets that are there. And that's something I've always, tried to put into all of our organizations because of that. And if you fail to do that, it is a very expensive proposition, because the settlements, for just one rogue employee, can be in the multiple tens of thousands of dollars on very seeming innocuous cases, where, somebody might say, well, there's not much harm there. It doesn't matter. If you don't have these programs in place and they're not, being fulfilled on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and you're not living up to the promise, there's an attorney out there that's gonna extract a lot of money from your back pocket. And if nothing else, Free Enterprise understands that. But it's above and beyond, because one of my concerns is, I said earlier, we fire first and ask questions later. I was sort of being facetious there, because you always want to see the situation turn around. It's like Kim said earlier, another important point here is that, there are a lot of good things that come out of a lot of stories here. They're not all terrible. And I've seen 2 cases just recently in our organization where the person was called to task immediately, was immediately called in, coached, and counseled, and turned it around. And in both cases, they were very valued employees. They just didn't understand that what they were doing was wrong. They apologized. Everyone said they were comfortable moving forward, and all the channels were laid in place in case this sort of behavior ever came up again. And we've never had to have those conversations twice. And I'm glad of that and thankful that, there may be just some misguided people out there. A lot of people say, well, a tiger doesn't change its stripes very easily. But in these cases, we did have success, and I was happy about that.
That's a great point. I think a lot of this, and I'm going to sort of segue into something a little bit different, but a lot of this is lack of awareness. And when I was at NOAA, one of the things I did was I took all the training that they offered, and I learned a lot. It was particularly the lessons that they did on microaggressions, but the bystander intervention stuff. I had a situation. I was with some coworkers, and there was some more senior male coworkers, and they said just the most inappropriate, funny, haha comment, and I still haunts me to this day that I didn't just say something right there on the spot, but it was just so inappropriate, I froze. And what was running through my head was, I'm just in complete shock that you would think that that would be an appropriate thing to say. And I just was speechless, literally. And then the other person just walked off. And then I did go back and say something to this person later, like, why would you think that that was okay to say? But the actual event it lasted it seemed like slow motion, but it was like 2 seconds. And I still get mad at myself for not being able to respond just like that. But I was just in shock. And I worry that without taking these training things, and even if you understand it, it's sort of you really got to train a lot to almost have the response be a reflex. And then with the microaggression stuff, I didn't even think about a lot of that stuff. And I guess maybe there's an upside and a downside to sort of overanalyzing everything you say before it comes out of your mouth. But I learned a lot on those training tutorials and things. And I'm maybe before the end of the show, I'd love to know if there's public facing links where just anyone can go, because one of the things that I found so valuable with Kelly's program is all the things that she stood up. But of course, I think you got to have a NOAA.gov email to access a lot of that stuff. But I'm sure there's other information out there. But maybe it's a question for Kelly. Where do you get a lot of verification and feedback on the preventative measures? Because how do you know those are working? Do you just look for the case incidents to go down and assume, or do you get people saying feedback like, I took this and then this incident happened and I handled it this way?
It's a mixture of both. When it comes to numbers, it's tricky. Like, you actually want them to get higher. If you know you want to know, like, high numbers or higher numbers isn't a bad sign. It's a sign that people who didn't feel comfortable to come forward feel comfortable to come forward. That's always a metric. Like, I tell people, if your number's 0, it's not 0, and you should be concerned. It maybe shouldn't be hundreds, right? But it shouldn't be 0, just given what we know about the prevalence of harassment in the workplace. So when there's like a little spike after a training, that's always actually a good sign that people knew to come forward. The second way to determine is people do say, oh, this is great. But there's measures. Like, we've done surveys about asking people. We've done prevalence surveys that are targeted, and they actually link in microaggressions because we want to know who's our most vulnerable in NOAA. And so we link in identity, marginalized identity, and how you identify yourself. And if you experience microaggressions during the day, which can range from like being asked over and over again, what country are you from, right? Are you from the States? That's a microaggression. Asking women if they're pregnant, telling women, oh, you look different today. Did you wear makeup or not wear makeup, is a microaggression. It takes on a lot of different forms. So linking that in a survey, we track prevalence metrics. We also look for strength of bystander intervention. We survey people who say they've intervened. So maybe no one reported, but how likely are you to intervene? We also looked at the impacts of bystander intervention. Like, did you feel empowered? Did you feel like it didn't go well and people retaliated against you? So there's a lot of metrics. And that's the other thing, and one of the myths about this work. I'm a social scientist, and that's the soft science, and there's not a way to track this, but there's tons of people-focused metrics. There's tons of ways to demonstrate efficacy of a program. You just have to be more creative and look at the different things.
One thing I'm curious about, Kelly, and it came up in one of my organizations a few weeks ago, where a young waiter, as Aubrey would refer to the hospitality side of it, came in and referred to an older colleague as sweetheart. And she immediately went off in my presence and corrected him real quickly. She says, you do not use terms of endearment in the workplace. And I thought, wow, that was pretty quick. And she responded, so immediately. I was kind of taken aback by it. What's the approach on terms of endearment, like, dear and sweetie and things like that in the South, where it's more of a Southern thing, where people refer to other people like that? Is that just not an accepted thing in today's world?
Well, there's cultural context, right? So yeah, in the South, people are more likely to say honey or dear and sweetheart. But then part of it is like, we have to evolve as times evolve, right? And so in a workplace, it's best to refrain from that language. Yes, a lot of people who say it mean nothing behind it. But the thing about microaggressions, which are also called subtle acts of exclusion, I like that word better because it's more explains what it is. It's ways that you subtly make someone excluded or feel highlighted in a way that isn't positive, right? So if somebody else's experience is like, I reserve sweetheart for like my mom and my partner, I really don't want to be called sweetheart by my boss. I don't care if it's what we do in this state or in this particular location. In the workplace, we have to let go of some of those things for work. Outside with your friends and family who know you, okay, say whatever makes you feel comfortable. But know, again, generationally, and as we move forward, English is an ever-evolving language. That's what I tell people. And like, well, that's just the way we say it. And we don't want to use they for a person. That's not correct English. English is always evolving. Language and vernacular evolves. And as it evolves, we need to go with it. And if it's saying that we should not be calling people honey and sweetheart, it's 2022. It's best if we don't. It's best if we keep that to the people we know who are accepting about this.
Well, I think that young man had a come up as that morning that I didn't even have to step in and say anything about. It was a good lesson for me, that I need to watch out for those sort of things too. So thank you for sharing that. That's important. Dr. Neal, you go.
Yeah, I had some questions, I guess, definitely to Taylor, but maybe anyone else feel free to chime in. I'm not too particular familiar with sort of the training that goes into broadcast meteorology, but I'm curious, do you think it's time for the universities, particularly if they're teaching broadcast classes, and maybe they're doing this already and I don't know about it, but to teach how to deal with this and what are the proper ways? It's shocking to me to listen to people say, well, this is just part of the job. I mean, that's just not right on so many different levels. But where can we start addressing this early on in the career so that people don't pick this career path and then get into a career and then realize, oh, well, there's all this other stuff that no one told me about. And if you learn about it, but you don't learn about what to do about it, then it may drive people away from the career. I don't want to see that happen. I wonder, what are folks' thoughts on the universities dealing with this, not just as an issue, but as a, career development coursework type thing?
I definitely think education on it could help. But also, I had mentors and they kind of were like, okay, are you prepared for this? And until it starts happening to you every day, you're not really prepared for it. And then you just kind of get your thick skin and it becomes part of the job. But sometimes, I don't want to victim blame myself, but I did choose to be on TV. I did choose to be in the public eye. It doesn't make what these people are saying to me correct, but sometimes when you come forward and say these things, people are like, well, you are on TV. And so it's hard, I don't know. I don't know if I could have ever really been prepared. I just think it takes kind of getting used to it.
So along with what Taylor said, in your internship, I think that's kind of a little bit more of when you start to, all right, this is what the TV industry is. And you start to take a look at some of those things and they go over a lot of that. My mentor did. But at the same time, at first, I actually never wanted to be on TV. I wanted to be behind the scenes. I was never an on-camera kind of person. And so I was kind of talked into it as in, hey, if you want to do this, if you're really interested in this, this is kind of, probably the best route for you to take. So I took it. And I'm very grateful that I did. And I'm very happy with what I do. But, TV wasn't exactly my aspiration to be. I wanted to be more behind the scenes, and then it just kind of became something that you dealt with over time.
Yeah. And I worry, I don't know, when you deal with it for so long, sometimes, I love what I do and I do what I do because I want to keep people safe and I want to help people. And then you hear this really loud minority all the time. And it does sometimes make you resent being on TV, resent being in the public eye because you're dealing with this all the time. And I'm like, man,
and it does hurt. It does hurt. And it still hurts, and you try to get, I don't know if Taylor, you feel it. It's that little burning sensation that you kind of get in your chest when you get an email or a message like that. And sometimes you can't get it out of your head for at least a few minutes, and you try to move past it. But we're human and these things do hurt. And it's something in addition that you have to go through. Also, when you're kind of, I feel like I've become more of a defensive person, being in this job, because sometimes you do almost have to defend your forecast at times. And so it's kind of like, all right, well, sometimes I'm down on myself because the forecast busted, or I've got to deal with this. And I've got people angry, because we got half an inch of snow more than, we were supposed to. And then you have those comments on top and they can be, they just, they hurt. We're human. And as much as you put up with it and as much as you think you have thick skin, sometimes we can only deal with so much. So you try to forget it. And I think what Jen said earlier, there are a lot of things that I try to forget and put behind and just not think about.
Yeah. And I get a lot of the sexual harassment side. It just makes you feel icky. I'm just like, why am I doing this? Like I studied so hard to become an atmospheric scientist, got 2 degrees, and I worked really hard. And I just get up here so people can write in and tell me how much they liked my body today. And thank you for wearing this color. And come on. Sometimes it makes this job hard.
It is ridiculous that you guys have to deal with this. Let's just be
Mhm.
honest. And Kelly, you mentioned you're a social scientist. I am also. And when I hear these things, I think about, different ways that we think about behavioral intervention. One thing we can try to do is what the question you've asked is, should we train the people who are going to experience this to have more tools in their toolkit to handle it? But another possible solution is to try to modify the situation in such a way that we reduce the frequency of the behavior even occurring in the first place. So Taylor, you highlighted a really interesting idea, actually, that could be a partial solution, in that you noted that when your whole body is on screen, you get this more than you do when it's not. And I'm going to put this, I'm a little conflicted about this point I'm about to make, because I know there's a little social science that's gone on about the effect of broadcasters on things like the interpretation of risk, how people are interpreting risk from you and their recall of information. And there were even some controlled experiments where they took broadcasters on screen presenting information and off screen, and how did that affect comprehension and recall later on. And there did seem to be a positive effect of broadcasters being there to sort of highlight, different geographic areas and just give expression to this cold data. It's a very human thing when you're trying to communicate about risk. But I do wonder if that can be done effectively from the chest up, neck up, do we have to have all of you on the screen all the time in all situations? Maybe it's something that we just really need for certain kinds of coverage that we don't need to have all the time, because there could be a balance here between your experience of harassment and your well-being and the well-being of the audience. And it is worth exploring your well-being as something that matters. This is something that maybe our field should think about. Can we take women out of situations where they are likely to then garner harassment? I think this is something we're thinking about in academia with field work programs. We're thinking about how can we reduce the incidence of harassing situations for women? What kinds of measures can we take to try to protect people from that ever happening to them in the first place? And I do wonder if for broadcast, that's something we should be asking too.
Something I know really helped me as well is I just turned off all messaging for a little while, which is hard because you want to be able to get that information from your viewers. And I do need their input on severe weather days, but for a while I just turned off messaging. And if you can't see it, you can't get it. You can't see it,
And I hear that from a lot of other females, and I hate that, because I've actually made some very fantastic friends through, the Facebook messaging, viewers, and, all those things. And I end up having these contacts and building this relationship with our viewers. And I really hate that it has to come down to it, because especially in smaller markets where you're maybe a little bit more a part of that community as opposed to maybe something a little bit larger. And I really hate that a lot of women especially have to do that, because there is an aspect you're missing out on. But I completely understand. It comes to a point where you just can't do this anymore, and it's just easier to turn off the messages. But there is something being lost there by doing that, some great information or future stories, or just a perspective on different things, or whatever may have you.
Yeah, it's just hard too, because most of my messages, very few of them are actually from viewers that want to ask me a weather question. It's way more the other way than anything else. Or it's someone who starts with a weather question to bait you into answering, to then go into. So at this point, sometimes I'm like, man, I don't know if it's just worth it to turn it off and then turn it on severe weather days. But then you still know what's going on at home. You still know people are at home thinking these things, even if I'm not seeing their comments. I'm like, oh, well, I know so-and-so is going to sit there videotaping me today. Whatever.
It's scary to hear that again, I think the conversation that's happening, you all are talking about it on the side here, is that what scares me about this conversation is it recenters those who are experiencing the harassment about what they can do to stop it. And that's not the solution. The solution is, who's ever watching this right now, you are the solution. You asking your management, What do we have in place for this? This is happening every day to our coworkers in this field. What do we have in place? Can we develop a policy? Can we hire someone to come help us? Can we bring training? The solution is not turn off your phone, although I agree the short-term solution is for your mental health, turn off the notifications. I 100% support that. That's you taking care of you. But you work for a company, and it is the company's job to take care of you so you can do the job that you are paid to do and went in blood, sweat, and tears to get your degrees as a scientist. And second of that, it is all of our jobs on this panel and watching to make work better for everyone, no matter what the issue is. And that starts by asking your management and empowering them in a nice way. We're not saying tell them they're terrible people, but empowering them to say, hey, I watched this powerful conversation today. What can we do about this? Can we start a policy? Can we hire someone? Can we have a consultant come in? Can we do some training? What can we do? Can you even play this panel back to them and say, can you watch this and see what people are saying is happening? The solution is not you all on this panel talking about being harassed. The solution is everybody watching and next to us to take care of each other. That's what a culture of accountability is. And so we need to stop talking about, oh, don't show your body, which I do agree might be a temp solution. Don't show your body, don't, turn off your notifications, and shift to what are the policies in place to make work safer for everyone, so everyone feels like they can show up and do their best work. And I think that's where people need to move to. And when people move there, you won't have to turn off your notifications because there'll be a policy that flags words. I mean, you all are geniuses here. There can be a computer program that flags certain words, baby, outfit. It can flag it automatically and you can say, check, we're going to block those folks. There are things that can be done that you don't have to go, I'm turning off my notifications, and you all don't have to be traumatized, which is what this really is. Real pain being bled onto this panel so people can see. And if you've sacrificed your stories, we should honor that you've given us your trauma and your pain for 5 seconds by asking management what they're going to do to make it better. Otherwise, there's no point to you sharing your story if we're going to just do nothing when you leave. So I just feel compelled to share that the solution is with all of us.
Well, I think that's a really positive note right there that maybe we can kind of begin to wrap this conversation up tonight, Kelly. I feel empowered. I think we've raised awareness tonight. We've armed our potential victims with some tools that they can use. I think we're talking to organizations, how they can build systems to combat it. But there's still a lot of work to be done. But, please don't let this scare you from entering our field. It's not just meteorology. It's every aspect of human life. And I'll ask any of the panelists if they have any last things they want to say, and then I'll toss it to James to wrap us up.
I'm going to have to duck out, but thank you all for having me back for tonight. And it was a great conversation. And thank you all. I miss you all already.
Yeah, come back.
You too.
Have a good night, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
I just want to say really quickly, Kelly made an excellent point that women shouldn't feel like they have to take themselves wholly off of TV. And
that sort of defeats the purpose.
It does. I mean, part of the challenge I was thinking about was we can't control all those people in the sphere that are doing those things, and I do think though, when you think about what's the root cause here, in part, I don't think that we're helped by the standard in our field of having men can wear these awesome suits on TV that do not sexualize them, and women have to wear form-fitting dresses and skirts that do, and heels and makeup and the whole business. And yeah, there's been a lot of commentary about how men don't have this happen to them. If they were forced to wear muscle shirts and whatever else, they probably would too, but we're not forcing them to wear that stuff. Why is station management forcing women to be sexualized? And why do we accept this as a standard for broadcast meteorologists working in these places? Is there
Good
something
point.
that we can do to try to make this a point and help to create a more equal playing field for women? If we were just even able to take control of our own presentation, then that could actually be a terrifically empowering step.
Anybody else? James, you can wrap us up.
All right. Taylor, anything from you?
No, I think I speak for a lot of people my age in this industry. I know I've talked to a lot of meteorologists that are dealing with the same thing. I know there's some meteorologists that are working hard to, get this information out there and try to figure out what we can do. I don't know if there's a lot of people that post the messages on social media. I don't know that that's the solution. I don't know what the solution is. But I think we're all talking about it and working towards a better future for broadcast meteorologists. So that's good.
Jen, anything else from you?
Yeah, this has been a really great conversation. And I think that it's been neat to see all the different perspectives. And I think just making sure that people are empowered to speak up and make sure that you are sharing with and having those people around you to support you, and you really don't know where everybody's been. And so being able to just share your experience and talk about what's going on and trying to get that support is so important. It really made a huge impact on me to have to finally start talking to somebody and just being like, no, I don't want to listen to all this mess. I don't know how you handle social media. Social media can be great and it can be the devil. I mean, it's just so awful sometimes. So I don't know where the solution is with that. But I'm encouraged that, and I reiterate too, we need to have women in this field, and we need to be, growing in this. And I don't want anybody to be deterred from joining the sciences and meteorology as a whole, and being a broadcaster, because we need caring folks. I just hate for Taylor and other young people who are coming into this having been bombarded with this crap. That is disheartening to me. But I love, Taylor, I love your attitude. I mean, you want to help people, and that's what shines through. And I just hope that will win out over all of the other garbage that's thrown your way.
And we have to let Taylor go because she has to be up here at the TV station in like 4 hours. When do you come in here, Taylor? What time do you walk in the door here?
I try to get there by 3 most days.
Oh, brutal. So you're past your bedtime. But Taylor, thank you. I know this was kind of a hard topic tonight, but we'll have you back on a lighter night. But it was great having you on the show, and thanks for coming.
Thanks, Taylor.
Bye, Taylor.
All right, so let's do this. Let's take a break here. Again, Jen's got a lot of things going on, so we don't have a This Week in Tornado History. We do have Tony's report, and we will come back, and we're going to do picks of the week, and we do have some very active weather. In fact, Troy, you've been kind of watching the weather. Real quick, what's the situation?
Yeah, we have a tornado emergency. I know Rick probably is watching this across the state line over in Arkansas, issued by the Little Rock Weather Service. Folks, it looks bad. They're around the North Little Rock area, around the Air Force Base. That's where that emergency is at this point. And it appears to be a very serious situation there. They have had reports of tornado on the ground out to the west a little bit toward Mayflower. Homes are damaged near Highway 89 and I-40 near Mayflower. And that thing is coming into Little Rock Air Force Base right now.
Looks like they've got the catastrophic tag on this thing.
They do. They do.
Which is just horrifying. There's a horrifying radar signature. So
yeah,
again, our friends in Little Rock are busy with that. But let's take a quick break, and we'll do some email, and we'll talk with Bruce and have much more coming up as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your Astronomy Outlook.
We're 2 years out from another great American eclipse. On April 8th, 2024, the moon will be at just the right distance as it passes in front of the sun, totally eclipsing it. This event will be visible from Central America to Southeast Alaska, from Antigua to Hawaii. But the real show will arrive in Mazatlan, Mexico, just after 1 p.m. local time. It'll move northeast into Texas, through Arkansas, southern portions of Missouri and Illinois, across Ohio, and then ride the southern shores of Lake Erie in Ontario through upstate New York, then across northern Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine before exiting out over the Canadian Maritime provinces about an hour and 40 minutes later. This 3,000-mile long, 120-mile wide path is where totality lies. That's the total eclipse. Everything else is just a partial eclipse. Now, there's a lot of things in astronomy that are overhyped. I'm guilty of it myself. This is not one of them. If you've got the opportunity to get into the path of totality, do it. Seeing a 99% partial eclipse is really only about 1% the experience of totality. It's worth starting to think about where you might go, too. The population along the path of the 2017 eclipse doubled to an estimated 20 million people. Forbes recently put the number of people currently living in the path of the 2024 eclipse at 32 million. With 16 of the 25 largest cities in the United States within a day's drive of totality, you're probably going to have some company. So where to go? The driving factor will be weather. And WeatherBrains listeners know well that the accuracy of forecasts fall off significantly as you go from 5 to 7 to 10 days. So you know how much value to put on a 768-day forecast. But looking at images of GOES 17 from April 8th, 2022, pretty much all of Mexico and Texas had clear skies, as well as the Great Lakes region. The rest of the path, it was pretty cloudy. But there'll be a lot of analysis of weather along this path between now and then. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
All right, just maybe, we have a few emails to read tonight.
Letters, we get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
All right. So I'm going to do just a few emails here. Let's start off with, as we were talking about current weather, we actually had our friend Nate Larson write about what's been going on up into parts of the Dakotas. I do Dickinson, North Dakota, and blizzard warnings are up for at least the next couple of days with 1 to 2 feet of snow coming in that area and very strong winds. So he was bringing that up here about how the weather is just kind of nutty up and, we're going the wrong direction here. It's not springtime. It's big time winter going on here. And then our friend Rob Strecker wrote about forecasting severe weather versus winter weather. And he goes, I was thinking today, why can't we forecast a major severe weather event up to 8 days out with a fair accuracy? Why can we do that? But with winter weather, it's a challenge even up to the day of the event. Both systems will be off the coast until about day 2 or 3. Is it something to do with one being the cold side of a storm system and the challenge of where the cold air will line up with the best dynamics versus a relatively larger area in the warm sector of a system? Plus, do the winter systems behave more erratically, can seemingly change their positions from forecasts than summer systems? Any thoughts on that?
That's a Neil question.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about this one. I may have to reply in writing.
I mean, winter weather is just hard. I mean, this the nuance of what is the temperature going to be when the precipitation gets there is still very difficult, I think, to nail down as part of it,
Yeah, I mean, I taught thermodynamics for a long time. It's not as easy as you think. I mean, you've got all sorts of different heating mechanisms going on. And that's why it's tricky, and that's why the models actually struggle with it a lot.
Yeah. So last email here, Anna Wolverton wrote, was asking about closing schools on severe weather days. And she wanted to get everybody's thoughts on that with, I guess there were she was in Mississippi and we've had a big severe weather outbreaks. And for the past 3 weeks, schools are shutting down for them. I can understand doing delayed openings, early closings. And so there's been this increase. I wanted to get, why are schools doing this so often these days? I'd love to hear everyone's opinion on this. Any thoughts on that?
Gosh, I feel like our Alabama crew should chime in first. I mean, you guys, after the Enterprise tornado, the state went into this whole thing of automatic shutdown at the tornado watch stage. And there were a lot of debates that arose as a result. Should this be our policy, and where are children safest? Are you just avoiding liability? I don't know that any schools were hit in Mississippi to precipitate that. So that's interesting to hear that that's happening in that state, but would love to know from our neighboring state people if you guys have any thoughts on that.
Well, here's the deal. I mean, Enterprise happened in 2007. A tornado hit a large high school. It killed 8 or 9, I forget the exact number of students in the school. And then that's when everybody started to shut down. And here's the deal. And you know, I'm going to get cranky on this, but it's okay. I don't care. I mean, so you had these national news people came in here from all over the country, just criticizing, condemning the school officials. You didn't send the kids home. You killed these kids. I mean, these nitwits don't even understand tornado safety. They don't deal with tornadoes. They have no knowledge of tornadoes. They don't know what they're talking about. And the truth is, if they would have sent those kids home, the death toll could have been 200. High school kids are not going to sit around and listen for tornado warnings. They're going to go play, you know, Minecraft or whatever, not paying attention. They're going to be in their cars. They're going to be in their home, not paying attention. And if you could have seen the homes that were destroyed in that town, the death toll would have been horrible. So they saved a lot of lives by keeping them in school. And the other problem we've got here, if you send kids home, in many systems, you're going to send a majority of kids home to manufactured housing.
Absolutely.
Where they don't have a way to get out. And the school building is a safer choice. So my position for all these school systems that keep, you know, dismissing, and listen, there's no right or wrong on this. Every system is different. The demographics are different. But for the systems that have so many kids that live in manufactured housing, at least leave 1 or 2 schools open for them so they have a safe place to stay. A lot of the newer schools are basically tornado shelters. And, you know, I just have fear that they're letting kids go to a death trap, and you can't do that. But it's a hard question because every system is different.
It's a new thing that popped up here after the May 2013 tornado where we had 7 fatalities in an elementary school. And I have the same exact views as you, James. I mean, it's an independent district decision. You know, I'm not criticizing, or I would never tell anybody what to do, but in a lot of cases, the students are safer at school where they're supervised and at least someone's paying attention to the weather. We looked at tornado fatalities at the 2 elementary schools that were hit, or in the area where the 2 elementary schools were hit in May 20 of 2013. And it's interesting to note, just like you see, how many of those children would have been dispersed out into all those houses that got EF4 and EF5 damage that were in one place. So anyway, it's an interesting discussion, but it is something that's happening here more often. I mean, May 20 of 2019, I mean, there were schools closing. University of Oklahoma closed the day before the event. So it's happening not just Mississippi and Alabama, but lots of other places.
Thank you so much, everybody. Go ahead, Troy.
No, I guess my question, Jen, would be for Rick or any. Let's just get right down to it. This is probably for liability purposes. What do you think?
Speaking off the clock, I mean, that's probably a lot of it. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, there's true concern for the student safety, I know, but there has to be some of that in there as well.
Yeah. And my concern completely is with James, because not only that, but you have parents, both of which have to work. They're probably not going to get off work. You get the students at home. And I see a disaster there at some point when this doesn't quite work out right.
Yeah, but this could be a whole show topic. We could go 2 hours on this alone, but it's an important topic. And again, let me just say this for all of these superintendents that make the decisions, it ain't easy. They're going to catch, what, no matter what they do. Everybody's going to be mad. And I tell them, the ones that I talk to, you just got to make the right decision and don't worry about the comments that you're going to get. And for every system, it's different. Their demographics are different. Where the housing, it's different. Everything's different. They all have to make up their own minds on this. But again, it is so important for these systems where a majority of kids are going to go home to trailers. You got to give them a safe place. You got to leave at least 1 or 2 schools open to give them a safe place to stay. You can't send them to a death trap.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody, for sending the emails. Please know that we see them all and we appreciate all your comments and questions and everything that you send in. We try to get to as many as we can. You can send us email at weatherbrains.com. And also go to our website and you can click over on the side there. You can sign up for our newsletter. We have a guest writer this week. So that'll be fun. He's been helping me put something together with a few more images and stuff to tell kind of a follow-up from last week's show. So look for that on Thursday morning in your email box, but you can sign up there. And back to you, James.
All right, Bill, is Bruce with us this week?
No, and I need to invite him. Thank you for reminding me, James.
Okay. Bruce probably got his feelings hurt here. So let's do an update on the Arkansas tornado, Troy.
Yeah, let you know this is a little unusual for us that follow METAR surface weather data. Is that North Little Rock Air Force Base has an ASOS there, but they normally keep it, I think, in an automated mode, which means there's not going to be any manual observations. Well, that changed at about 26 minutes after the hour. So here, about 14 minutes ago, Little Rock Air Force Base reported 9 miles in a tornado with hail of 3/4 of an inch. The National Weather Service in Little Rock, the observer did not put this in there, did not manually augment it in. But according to Weather Service in Little Rock, the observer reported the tornado was on the northwest side of the base on the ground. Wow. They had it sighted. And so that it looks like now that's maybe focusing more to the south now of Cabot, Arkansas. The storm doesn't look like it has quite the definition that it had a little while ago. It's not quite as wound up as it was, but tornado emergency. And that's noteworthy in itself.
Yeah, it looks like it's gone through some type of an occlusion process.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
It could come right back. That thing has been very persistent over the last few hours. So very nasty situation in Little Rock. And again, we're doing this on April 11th. A lot of people listen to these shows years after we do them. But again, some very active weather going on here. So Bill Murray, why don't you bring in our great friend, Bruce Jones?
Yeah, Bruce, we're a little late tonight. Sorry, I'm out of practice. I've been gone for 7 weeks and I've gotten how to do it. I knew James took care of you every week, but I dropped the ball tonight. But Bruce, we've had an outstanding conversation tonight about a very important topic in our industry and in all fields about harassment. But we're having our thoughts turn immediately tonight to places like North Little Rock and Jacksonville, Arkansas, where there's obviously a tornado on the ground, a large and extremely dangerous tornado. And we just hope that a lot of those folks that are in the path of the dangerous storms tonight, tomorrow, and on Wednesday and Thursday have their normal weather radios. I pulled my little special Midland out today and checked its batteries and got it all tuned up, because this thing is just outstanding. This little weather radio here not only gives you the weather radio channels, the 7 channels, but you also have AM and FM. And you have a flashlight on the end of it. So unlike my cell phone that I sometimes leave the flashlight on, this one is a little harder to do that. I like.
I can never figure out how to turn my cell phone flashlight on. I have to call on. I have to ask Siri to do it for me.
Yeah, and then sometimes I don't know that it turned its cell phone, and then you get a funny look when it's trying to shine out of your pocket or something. But
we've got a new version, Bill. We've got a new version of that little one that you've got. That's going to have the crank on it too.
Cool.
Yeah, I got a new version of that. Yeah, because that one relies on AA batteries, 3 AA batteries, and it always worries me that if your batteries go out in the middle of an outbreak, then what are you going to do? So we're redesigning another version of that, a little slightly larger, not very much bigger, slightly larger. And we're also going to put a hand crank on that one. So then you have the ability to crank it and regenerate your own power. So you can continue to listen to AM, FM, or NOAA weather radio, even in the midst of a huge power outage. And by the way, I've got one of the storm chase video feeds up here, and it's showing that signal briefly lost, meaning whoever's chasing probably can't find a cell phone tower is still up there near Mayflower, Arkansas. So, we know this happens in the aftermath of these tornadoes, that you lose power, you lose electricity, you lose cell phone service. So I always encourage everybody to get ready ahead of the storm. It's kind of heartbreaking to see all of the orders that come in for these weather radios after a tornado, and it just breaks my heart. So if you're listening to this show, and if you like severe weather, if you follow severe weather, if you like meteorology, if you're just one of those people who grew up in the United States of America and enjoys watching our beautiful and sometimes scary skies, please encourage everyone to take advantage of the NOAA Weather Radio Network. This is a service provided by our federal government. They have a radio network of more than 1,300 transmitters nationwide that send this life-saving signal to about 95% of the U.S. population if they'll get one of these little receivers. And if you're a fan of WeatherBrains, we have a special offer for you. If you'll go to midlandusa.com and order a weather radio, either for yourself or to give as a gift, or maybe your kids go to childcare. Make sure that childcare center has a NOAA weather radio. You can get 25% off when you buy one using the promo code SPANN25. That's SPANN25. SPANN25 is the promo code. And when you use that at midlandusa.com, you'll get 25% off all the weather products and accessories. And there's free shipping on orders over $100. So, if you got a little tax money that came back from Uncle Sam and your kids go to a daycare center, for corn's sake, buy one of these weather radios and put it in that daycare center, because one day it may be your children that get saved by it. And of course, every school, every church should have a weather radio. This is the anniversary of the 1965 Palm Sunday tornado outbreak. Occurred today in 1965. And, these events do occur on Palm Sunday, on Easter Sunday, when folks are in church. Please make sure your church has a NOAA weather radio and someone to monitor that broadcast if you're holding church services on a day where you expect any kind of severe weather. It's very important for all of us to kind of step up and, kind of take command of these situations and say, hey, you need to have a weather radio. Here's one for you. Let me help you set it up. Or at church, hey, you've got a weather radio there in the church office. Make sure somebody sits in there and monitors that during Palm Sunday or Easter Sunday church services. So again, the promo code is SPAN25, SPANN25, and you use that at midlandusa.com. And we've got a variety of different weather radios for different uses. If you're going out on a boat, you might want a hand crank radio. If you're going in an RV, going camping, but at home, it's nice to have a desktop radio that's set to go off for your local area. So when the National Weather Service issues these life-saving warnings, you'll be the first to get them.
Yeah, Bruce, I relayed a story last week at the beginning of the show. I didn't get to stay for the whole show, but I told them about being at a bed and breakfast in Mena, Arkansas the week before on that Tuesday night. I thought it was really interesting that the proprietor, not knowing that I had anything to do with weather at all, when we were checking in, he briefed me on, what their tornado procedures were, and having a NOAA weather radio and being across the street from a siren, they mentioned what all their warning mechanisms were. And then he said, come down if you hear the siren, and we're going to go into our tornado shelter that's out, and just to the right showed us where it was. And sure enough, lo and behold, on Wednesday morning we got to use the tornado shelter because the mesocyclone was coming right over us. And so it really made me think. You mentioned several places. There was a theme there. Every place needs to have a weather radio. Hotels, bed and breakfast, and places of accommodation need to too, and to have a plan for what to do when that tornado warning is issued by the National Weather Service. Thank you for your support, Bruce. We appreciate what you do for us and for everyone, because you're not just selling Midland, you're selling the NOAA Weather Radio program. You are the national ambassador for NOAA Weather Radio.
Well, thank you. And I do take that seriously. And I'm honored to help the National Weather Service run this network and promote it. I just think it's the best thing ever, if you take advantage of it.
It is great, Bruce. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to go around and do picks of the week here. Running a little long this week, but that's okay. Everybody's going to share something that is weather related. And Bruce, my pick of the week is actually a piece on the Palm Sunday outbreak from 1965 on this date from the Weather Service up in Indiana. A fascinating case study, and it's well studied, very famous among older people like me that remember it very well. So, but again, if you're interested in learning about the Palm Sunday outbreak of 1965, that'll be my pick of the week. And Kelly, we're going to give you some time to think about it, because we're going to come to you at the end, okay? Because I don't know if Kelly knows about pick of the week here. So let's go to let's see here, Jen. Let's go to you and what you got for us. What's your pick of the week?
So I don't know if I've had to do this before, but I have to take the foghorn. Actually, I don't have a pick.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, there you
But
go. You just do that, Jen. I actually have a pick this week. So
oh my god! Well, I do want to share something really quick though. I heard from Sally on text, and she did not get a chance to see the beginning. She's going to go back and watch the replay, but she said that she was listening and she was giving Kelly a lot of amens. So she loved what Kelly was saying toward the end. It was so inspiring. And she said, watching you women support one another made my heart so happy. If what I went through had any part of what just happened today, then it was worth going through it. And so I was so glad that I was able to share part of her story, at least through it. And I think that all of our experiences have an impact on this. So on this conversation. So I wanted to share that. And Kelly, she was loving what you were saying.
Absolutely.
All right. Awesome. All right. So Kim, I know you've had a wild few days here. So thanks for being on the show tonight. Thank you so much for sharing your heart. This has been hard to hear the whole show, but I think it's important. So thanks for your transparency tonight. So do you have a pick of the week for us? Everything else you're doing.
Yeah, I got one together while listening to this because there had been a great training that all the folks at the Severe Storms Lab who are involved in field work now have to take. And it is a public resource that anybody can access. It's from UC Riverside, and it's called Risk and Safety Training, the Fieldwork Toolkit Leadership Training Series. So if you will be involved in field work, or if you're going to be leading a fieldwork expedition, it is a great series that talks about things like building a better fieldwork future, preventing harassment and assault in the field. There are some really great publicly available resources that have been put together in pockets, and I'm really excited that there are institutions like mine that are drawing from those.
Excellent. And again, all of these picks will be up on the website, weatherbrains.com. Okay, Bruce, what do you have for us this week?
James, I have another Palm Sunday 1965 link to the actual Weather Bureau service assessment. It's a 92-page document. Page 45. Here's why we have NOAA weather radio. The Rockford, Illinois National Weather Bureau office. Actions taken. Number 1, called warning to Winnebago County Sheriff. Number 2, called warning to Rockford City Police. Number 3, called warning to telephone answering service. The telephone answering service called Rockford radio stations WROK, WRRR, WJRL, WLEV, and Rockford TV stations WTVO and WREX. They're calling these stations on the telephone to pass the tornado warnings along.
Wow.
This is why we have the NOAA Weather Radio Network, because it was an unworkable system of all of these phone calls, individual phone calls that had to be made to get a tornado warning out. And now it's automatic. If we've got a system that good and that automatic and that fast and that reliable, please take advantage of it.
Please, indeed. Every home, every business needs one. And if you have one, tell your friends that, because it is so important. But that's fascinating. And I would love to read that whole service assessment, because it's a very fascinating event. Okay, Neil, what you got for us? What's your pick of the week?
So I've got I guess maybe I have two. One's kind of related to the show. I'm going to try to find links to a lot of the folks that we worked with when we put together this program. There's a lot of companies out there that offer a lot of support services and training and guidance and modules and all sorts of things. I think it would be great for universities and companies to take a look at what's on offer out there. And my other pick of the week is this coming week is the first in a series of lectures on the potential National Strategic Computing Reserve. So OSTP is actually putting together some plans to potentially have on offer a lot of extra high performance computing, using what happened at COVID as an example. So you remember when the pandemic first happened, a lot of companies freed up high performance computing to run a lot of simulations instantly. There's been a lot of interest of what if this is the future. So OSTP and the White House are taking a look at what is within the realm of the possible, and they decided that weather forecasting would be the first example that they would use as what would happen in a national emergency if you had unlimited compute resources. So
wow, that's a dream come true.
Yeah,
awesome.
We'll see where it goes.
Absolutely. All right. The great pick. Thanks, Neil. Okay, Rick, let's see if we can peel his eyes off of that radar screen for a minute. And
Yeah, it's kind of calmed down in our area. My pick, it's hard to go a day this time of year without some significant tornado anniversary, either in Oklahoma or somewhere around here. We just passed the anniversary, the April 10th, 1979 Red River tornado outbreak. Still to this day, there hasn't been I don't think an EF1 or above tornado in Wichita County, Wichita Falls, Texas, since that day, which is leading to a lot of complacency in that area. But my pick of the week is our website a link on our website to the whole event summary, and you can read that disaster survey report and look at all kinds of amazing stuff with that event. I mean, it's important to remember that that's one of the earliest instances where it's documented of people taking cover under overpasses. A significant number of people died when trying to outrun the tornado in their vehicles. There's a lot of safety guidance and information that is based back in that event even today. So that's my pick of the week.
that's a great pick. Terrible Tuesday. Goodness gracious. I can't believe it's been so long. All right, Troy, what you got for us?
A couple of things, including a shout out. And I wanted to ask Rick about this one because I was kind of surprised, and it'll go to my pick of the week here in a second. But from last week's discussion, I noticed this evening, National Weather Service in Tulsa, in what I'll call, Rick, their third asterisk of their tornado warning, use the following. And I have never seen this. I don't think it's a template within WarnGen, but I like this. You know, we see usually severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado when it's radar indicated. I like this tonight that I saw from Tulsa. I'm using the warning from 4:45 this afternoon. At 4:44, a severe thunderstorm with strong low-level rotation that could produce a tornado at any time was located near Bonanza, moving east at 30. I like that a little better. And I don't know if that's a template within WarnGen. Rick, I was going to ask, is that something that's in there, or that's something that maybe Tulsa created?
I don't want to get Tulsa in trouble, but it sounds like they may have got in there and kind of hacked the code a little bit. I don't know, but it's interesting because when I worked in Tulsa in 97 and 98, early 99, we actually developed something like that. It was the first generation of impact-based warnings where we had different levels of tornado warnings. So radar indicated, then there was that would have been one of the higher levels of tornadoes warnings just before an actual tornado report. So it sounds like they've kind of revived some of that. And interesting, I've never paid close enough attention to see that, but I'll have to watch for it.
And it's there. I will tell you, please, and everybody's going to laugh at me, but please go back to where we say at 4:44, National Weather Service meteorologists see a severe thunderstorm. Give credit to the people. Radar doesn't issue a warning. It's the National Weather Service people that do. And when we dropped that a few years ago, I think that was bad. So pick of the week. These are going to be all Daryl Hertzman's children that I'm going to talk about here for a second. My pick of the week is, in case you want to go back and look at the text warnings, Daryl and I, a couple of years ago, I kind of worked with him, and we created a special pill. And if you use the address, which we'll have on the pick of the week, it's a WAR pill. And then you would use for, let's say for Rick's area, you use OUN. In Tulsa, it'd be TSA. And you can put back the last 200 issues. We put tornado warnings in there. We put flash flood warnings. We put WCN special weather statements, LSRs, everything with severe and hazardous weather we put in that WAR. And so you can go back and look at the history. And it's a real nice place to store data. So that's a great pick of the week as we go through the next couple of days, especially. And the other thing, guys, and I'm not sure, maybe I'm late to the party on this, but if you're a Twitter user, Daryl has also created, just look it up on your Twitter, do a search, IEM bot, the IM bot _ PDS. That will give you, the IM bot will put out a Twitter message when you have a particularly dangerous situation, put it out on Twitter. He also has one, IEM bot _ emergency. And by the way, that one is all tornado and flash flood emergencies. And that's where I got the LZK from Little Rock a little while ago on the show. So it's these are all Daryl's children, and what he does so damn well. Daryl does a great job.
He's a great American. He is a great American. He's the best. So Kelly, we have stalled long enough. It is now time to turn the floor over to you for your pick of the week.
All right, I don't want to get a foghorn. So I will say that I have two. I'm trying to overachieve to make sure I don't get one. First one is that I know a lot of NOAA folks and National Weather folks listen to this. So I want them to know about, shameless plug, the NOAA.gov website, that if you go to workplace violence prevention response, you're going to give up all of our public facing, but then there's a link to do the internal that has all of our trainings. It has all the things we're working on, policies, you name it. It also has a list of our partners, which Neil was talking about. And so my second plug and pick of the week is one of our partners, which is rain.org. It's rain with an extra N. And this has an excellent resource. We use this as a hotline. Any woman can call, any person, let me be very clear, any person can call this hotline to receive services. And there's a section called That's Harassment that goes through all the resources and how to identify sexual harassment in the workplace. So those are my two picks for the week.
Outstanding. And those are great picks. And again, for those that are listening, these will be on the website, WeatherBrains.com. But this show has run a little long here, but it was certainly
Hey.
Oh, that's right, Bill. Bill, I'm sorry.
Oh, man.
Bill is saying, hey, man. Hey,
I got a
whoa,
pick for a
dude.
change.
No,
I need
James,
to-
Bill will be gone for another 7 weeks. You don't.
Bill has not been on the show for like 3 years. I just thought, I'm having to get back into this routine here. So go.
Yeah, well, when you spend it in the parking lot at Wesley's, that's what happens to you. But weather analysis and forecasting, Tim Vasquez's outstanding book. This is not only an outstanding meteorological text, it's a great example of just how to write learning material. So I had lost my copy. I'd given it away to somebody. So Tim sent me a new copy and put me a neat little little bookmark in there for his meteorology lab, his nightly forecasting webcast that you can find on YouTube at youtube.com. Tim WXX, 8 p.m. Central Time. So Tim Vasquez and all of his books, they're all on my shelves, as we've talked about many, many times. They're always fascinating. James, some great guests coming up. Fabulous show tonight. Thank you, Kelly, for being on. Chance Hayes from Tulsa will join us next week. He's actually going to lead us through some basic storm spotter training. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Show 849 on the 25th, we'll have the warnings coordination meteorologist from the Storm Prediction Center, Matthew Elliott. We have an opening for show 850 on May 2nd, so I'll have to hurry and fill that. Eric Sorensen is going to join us on the 9th of May, thanks to Kim. We'll talk about the history of the monthly weather review on the 16th of May. That's going to be a lot of fun. And then Dennis Feltgen from the National Hurricane Center is retiring, and we'll have his official WeatherBrains retirement party on Monday, May the 23rd. And then Bob Henson, we moved his show back to Tuesday. That'll be a Tuesday show. After Memorial Day, Tuesday, May 31st, Bob Henson, and we're going to spend the night and the evening talking about famous TV weathercasters. So that's all the great shows coming up through May here on WeatherBrains.
All right. Well, Bill, my apologies. Welcome back. It's an honor having you back.
How soon they forget.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's right. Who, what, Bill, who, what?
Bill, who?
Anyway, we do have to wrap this thing up. Listen, thank you for listening and watching. We know that most of you listen, but some of you watch live. And for those that want to try that, we are live every Monday night at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central. Many people watch it on live.bigbrainsmedia.com. If you want to get in touch with us, the email address is email@weatherbrains.com. And all of the show notes, the picks of the week, all of that will be up on the website, weatherbrains.com. So on behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great week and God bless.
Thank you so much, Kelly.
Yeah. Thanks,
Thank
Kelly.
you,
That was
Kelly.
Thanks for
Thanks,
having
Kelly.
me.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Neil.
Thank you.
Dr. Kim, good luck
Great,
with everything
great
with the
show
baby.
tonight.
Yeah,